For our first presentation, we would like to hear from Harriet Deacon, Honorary Research Fellow at the University of Cape Town on Market Strategy for the Value Creation of ICH. So Professor Harriet Deacon is an Honorary Research Fellow at the University of Cape Town, and she has been working as a facilitator for capacity building for the 2003 convention, has worked very actively in that regard. Since 2018, she has led different projects by the British Academy and the British Council, worked together with communities in India and Kyrgyzstan on heritage-sensitive intellectual property marketing strategy development. She is consistently researching on sustainability of ICH. Please give her a big round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you also for inviting me to be on this panel. I'm very excited to be part of this conversation and very inspired by what we've heard from the youth presenters already today. And I think really what Siwan put on the table, and I think is really important, is to now be practical. How can we help promoting and protecting intangible cultural heritage in the market? And the issue I'm going to be speaking about is a project I've been involved in looking at a practical tool called heritage sensitive marketing and intellectual property strategies to do that. We call that HIPAMS for short. We've been hearing a lot about the cultural economy and what intangible cultural heritage can do to as a sort of resource for the development of creative industries. But at the same time, we need to think not just about what ICH can do for the market, but what the market can do for ICH and for the people that have invested their community's time and effort over generations in creating these resources. And it's really this feedback loop that we need to start talking about when we think about practical strategies for ICH in the market, so that those practical strategies can benefit the communities. In the UNESCO context around intangible cultural heritage, there's been historically a lot of concern that ICH is actually at risk from the market, that commercial forces could play a negative role in decontextualizing ICH, commodifying it, or over-commercializing. And there's also been an anxiety that there's an imbalance of power between communities who practice ICH and market forces. At the same time, since about 2015 or so, there's been an increased emphasis in UNESCO on ICH and sustainable development, and many communities need to use their ICH in the market for livelihoods. So the key question then is how can one practically think about how communities of practice that are using ICH in the market can somehow control the engagement with the market so that they can benefit, so that we see that down arrow working well for the communities and not just for big business. So the project I've been involved in, we call it for short HIPAMS India. And I've put the website there, hipamsindia.org, if you want to have a look online at the project. Was funded by the British Academy, led at Coventry University by Charlotte Valde, and at banglanatak.com by Ananya Bhattacharya. And essentially what we did in this project is we brought together some academic specialists together with an NGO working with communities and 3 different ICH communities in West Bengal, India, who already were making livelihoods from their heritage crafts and performances. But what they wanted to do was to exert greater control over their relationship with the market, and they also wanted to expand their market in some cases. And what we did was we developed this model called HIPAMS, Heritage Sensitive Intellectual Property and Marketing Strategies. And the idea is that you are focused on community concerns and needs, areas where they feel they need support to manage how they are marketing and commercializing their ICH, and bring together into that space some understanding of how do we manage the heritage issues, how do we ensure heritage safeguarding, and then also bring in marketing skills and intellectual property rights or legal skills. There were a number of outputs from the project, which you can see on the website. We developed strategies co-created with the 3 communities. We developed a toolkit discussing the methodology, and there are various reports and policy briefs also available there. Essentially, the idea is if communities are already engaging in the market and wanting to use their ICH for sustainable development, the HIPAMs are aimed at helping to understand how to maximize this engagement with the market for heritage safeguarding. And how to maximize the marketing the benefit for heritage safeguarding as well as for expanding the market, and then how to use intellectual property tools such as geographical indications or copyright or trademarks to support heritage safeguarding and marketing. And all of this is oriented around community needs. So what we developed was a HIPAMS model, and that looked first at diagnosis, seeing where the problems were, how were communities perhaps struggling to control their engagement with the market, where did they want to expand, and so on. And then secondly, strategy development, looking at what kinds of strategies could be used to improve the situation. And here being quite practical, because obviously many communities don't have the money to go to court. You want to have very practical, implementable solutions. And then strategy implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. And you can see here we've developed also a number of tools to help communities to navigate these different stages. Most of the tools are in the diagnostic stage, because we felt that current assistance for communities around cultural industry development actually didn't spend enough time on diagnostics. There's a lot of support for cultural and creative industries in marketing and IP tools, but there's not a lot of support in how to manage these issues in relation to heritage. And so what our departure point was really rethinking, how do we think about heritage in relation to the market? Because there hasn't been enough discussion about this, whether in academia or in UNESCO, except in a rather negative sense that we are concerned that there might be over-commercialization. We had 3 main points about the heritage reconceptualization. The first was you should think about what are the roots of the heritage as well as how that relates to the fruits or the products that you might put on the market. So what are the skills, meanings, traditions that you're actually utilizing for creating those products? And then to focus much less on whether each individual product is authentic as a kind of metric for how good the engagement is with the market for heritage safeguarding, and thinking more about how does market engagement enable the maintenance of heritage skills, repertoire over time. So the ability of communities to continue practicing their heritage over time is not really limited if a couple of products are not authentic, let's say, in the terminology some people use. And then to think not just about heritage life cycle itself, a particular heritage element, does it, last over time or not, but also thinking about the ecosystem of heritage and how different heritage practices within a community relate to each other. So when we come to thinking about strategies, we thought about these strategies in terms of two interlinked dimensions. The one is community empowerment. How do communities work together to control their relationship with the market? What kind of skills do they have to do that? And then the reputation of the heritage, not just in the market as a product, but also within the community as a kind of legitimate source of meaning and benefit and livelihood. And then the second dimension is between the skills repertoire, which I've already spoken about, and then this question of innovation. How do communities of artists think about innovation in relation to the market, and how heritage sensitive that innovation is? And if you take the roots and fruits model, it helps you to think about what kinds of innovation do you want to see in the community. So this is from the artist perspective. It helps them to think about how they want to see innovation, what kinds of innovation they want to bring in, and what kinds of heritage skills and repertoires they want to continue. So just taking an example and coming back now to this practical issue that Simon, I think, quite rightly highlighted. It's all very well talking about these things in theory, but do they work? And so we did, I'm just giving you a few examples from one of the communities that we worked with in Naya village in Pingla, West Bengal. There are about 80 Patachitra artist families, also known as Patuas. And they practice a tradition of singing with a painted scroll, which has a story on it. And they wanted to do a couple of different things in their strategy, and I'll just talk about some of the tools that we developed with them. So the first thing we did in the community to address some of the issues they raised was to work on community empowerment in three ways. The one was to talk about artists' rights and to do some training around the use of copyright. What are their rights as artists automatically? And then secondly, how do they use, they already had a geographical indication registered, how do they use that? The second area of empowerment that we worked on was digital storytelling, around how do community artists actually do their own direct marketing for themselves using digital media and other tools. And then thirdly, how do artists work together to do more collective marketing? They already had an artists organization, but how could they maximize the role of that in presenting themselves in the market? So some of the artists designed Patachitra scrolls using the traditional methodology to explain artist rights and the geographical indication to each other, and also to start using those tools to explain artist rights to other communities. We also worked with the artists on developing an art code, which is a code of ethics that helps artists to explain artist rights, and not just to each other, but also to third parties. So if they are negotiating with a gallery, for example, on sale of their products to the gallery, they've found it quite useful to have the art code with them, and it very clearly states what their rights are, and the fact that people who purchase their designs have to ask for their permission in order to use those designs commercially. So that's given the artists quite a lot more negotiating power in their interactions with third parties. When we did the digital storytelling and training and the diagnostics on the heritage roots and fruits, one of the issues that we discovered was that for the artists, the singing is a very important part of the tradition. And yet a lot of the products that they're selling actually don't obviously involve the songs anymore, because they're selling scrolls or they're selling paintings. So one of the challenges for the marketing side to make it heritage sensitive was to link the songs back to the products. And we did that by co-designing some packaging and labels with the community, where we had a QR code so that their digital storytelling and the songs that they were singing on the online clips could be linked to the products. And what we found was that this helped to encourage younger boys who really had stopped being interested in singing back into that part of the tradition. And then finally, we tried to find ways to harness visitors to the village to help with their marketing, and also to raise visitor awareness about what artists' rights were. So in summary, we have these concerns about ICH engagement with the market, but we can also see its potential. And I think what's very important is to see the role of practical projects like HiPAMS in helping to maximize benefits for ICH communities and minimize risks. Thank you.